Welcome to MrClaff.com's review of Cultural Diffusion, brought to you by Noble Review, concise review books. Probably the most important term of global studies, cultural diffusion means the exchange of ideas between cultures. This happened from Mesopotamia to everywhere else in the world. Religion, technology, ideas, literature, government, you name it, it's been exchanged. The Phoenicians were maritime explorers who settled many cities around the Mediterranean Sea. They're important to know because the Latin alphabet derived from them. Their writing system spread to cultures of the Mediterranean Sea, such as Greece. After Alexander the Great's conquests, a blending of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian cultures took place. This cultural diffusion was known as Hellenistic Culture, and the exchanging of ideas occurred in architecture, religion, art, and literature. Eventually, Greek culture influenced the Romans. Roman literature, art, philosophy, and architecture all showed Greek influence. This combination of Greco-Roman culture laid the foundation for Western civilization, or Western culture, in both Europe and the United States. The Silk Roads were trade routes that went from China through India and into the Middle East and Rome. Spices, metal goods, gold, silk, and many other products made their way from the Eastern world into the West. Because of the popular and valuable silks that came out of China, the path of trade was called the Silk Roads. Though violent in creating much religious strife, the Crusades created new trade networks between Europe, Asia, and Northern Africa. Not only were goods and innovations exchanged, but scientific and mathematical thought as well. Regarding the Muslim world, large and ornate mosques were constructed as a place for Islamic worship. Architecture used in Eastern Europe, such as domes and arches, were borrowed for these mosques. Hence, cultural diffusion from the Greco-Roman world was prevalent. Mansa Musa was a powerful king of Mali in Africa. He performed the Hajj and brought Islam into his African empire. Islam's strong presence in Africa continues to this day. When Russia became independent from Mongol rule in 1480, influences of Byzantine culture were still present. One example is the Cyrillic alphabet, which has connections to Slavic people who traded in Constantinople. One of the greatest examples of cultural diffusion is the Columbian Exchange, which was the trading of all plants, animals, resources, and diseases between Europe and the Americas. Did you know that in 1491 there were no pumpkins in Europe? To Europe came peanuts, avocados, turkey, pumpkins, corn, and potatoes. To the New World came horses, rice, wheat, cows, olives, and diseases such as smallpox and influenza. The transfer of diseases ultimately depleted Native American populations. In Northern Europe near the Baltic Sea, there was a commercial organization known as the Hanseatic League. States in modern-day Germany, Sweden, Poland, Latvia, Estonia, and others formed this organization to protect trading rights such as freedom of the seas and fair weights and measures. Peter Romanov was a Russian czar who wanted to imitate Western Europe, or Westernize, around 1680. This meant to modernize Russia militarily, culturally, economically, and technologically. Peter traveled to the West with his army and adopted their culture. Examples of Westernization include increasing the size of his army, expanding education, and removing Mongol influence from society in the way people dressed and presented themselves. Inspired by the French Revolution and the Enlightenment, Latin America saw revolutions around 1820. They were inspired by Enlightenment documents such as the Declaration of the Rights of Man. During the second half of the 18th century, there was an enormous increase in the number of machine-made finished goods being produced in factories across England. Such ideas of industrialization spread to mainland Europe, the United States, and eventually the rest of the world. In the Meiji Era from 1868 to 1912, the Japanese embraced Western technology and modernized their factories. They began to model their government and economy after the West. Today, cultural diffusion has become a much quicker endeavor, as all nations have become dependent on each other. They also can have their livelihood affected by events thousands of miles away. With information readily available on television and the internet, the entire world has become a network of dependent nations. For more review, you can get free flashcards and review sheets at MrClaff.com. We also invite you to check out Noble Review in both paperback and ebook formats. Best of luck on your tests.